Hi there, and here we are with another session of Clicks and Giggles. I'm here with a familiar face, Alice. How you doing, Alice?
Back. Hello.
Whether we like it or not, you're back. Um,
Absolutely.
so today we're talking about basically crap prompts and um, and also the results that come out of crap prompts and um, how those have changed. I think they've changed because I think ChatGPT and the rest of the AI gang have got a bit better at the
Hmm.
results. So even if you give them a pretty crap prompt, I actually think they can actually deliver much better now. So I think the prompts don't have to be so specific to start with.
Hmm.
I don't know what your thoughts are, Alice.
Yeah, I think so. I think, but also remembering that the first answer that you get from ChatGPT doesn't have to be the final product. I think you're right. You can, we don't like vague prompts, but I have noticed that as these ChatGPT 4 and then 5 comes out, then 5.2, yeah, you can give it a pretty simple prompt and it will give you a pretty good answer. But I have also experienced it with certain clients that are in very specific fields that the first answer appears to be great, and then you maybe read through and think they've gone on a tangent here, and then it needs more conversation to get to the final product.
Yeah, so I think one of the reasons why I thought we'd have this session talking about crap prompting is because sometimes I feel like we get sent the results of maybe a poor prompt or maybe just a simple prompt, and then just not enough scrutinizing of the
Mhm.
questions before sending it to us. So if I give you an example, there we had a handover to a new marketing manager and the retainer we had with that client was simply looking after their website. So hosting and just like website support. But we were asked for all of this information from that marketing manager. So some obvious things, website, backups, or I mean, source repository access and export, theme plugin licenses, keys, custom code, documentation, sitemap, robot. I mean, straight away, I know that the person that sent this has not written this.
No.
Um, because some of the things they're asking for here, I wouldn't know what they're talking about. Now, obviously, my background is not web development, but I've been dealing with web development for 20 odd years. And some of these things, I've got a vague idea, but I certainly wouldn't be asking them, So, and there's items on here that don't really have much to do with what we were doing in terms of SEO and all the rest of it. So I think what's happened there is someone's gone into ChatGPT and said, I am a new marketing manager. I would like a handover from the digital marketing um, agency. What should I ask for? And they've come back and said something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, then
Which could
I've gone to,
potentially take that could potentially take days to give
well,
back
yeah.
a
So
list like that.
I've sensibly, and I would hope any marketing manager, and this is the advice, to go back and just give it a bit of a sense check and say, just to let you know, ChatGPT, we're not Apple, and our digital marketing agency isn't a multinational agency on a retainer of £10,000 a month. Actually, they're managing our website, and it's 2 hours a month. Could you tell me what the handover should be? So it reduces. It's a little bit more relevant, but still, it's quite a lot. And I'm thinking, right, okay. I mean, for 2 hours, it's just not reasonable, is it? I said, how long would you expect this to take them to put this together? So they're talking about like 8 hours and then, 5 working days. And I'm saying, but I said we have a 2 hour retainer with them. Yeah, you're right to flag that up.
Yeah, I love that one. You're right to flag that.
Maybe you're going to have to quote them for the extra work just to have a handover. Now,
Yeah.
most marketing managers are not going to get 8 hours worth of agency support signed off just for a handover document. The previous marketing manager didn't have one. The new one probably won't ask for one. So why would I ask for sort of £600 worth of work just to have a document to have loads of information that they don't actually understand anyway? So it kind of, once you've told them this information, it quite quickly is reduced. I think other examples where we have had people send us really quite specific, requests and specifications about, let's just say, our server that their website's being hosted on, because they think they would like to improve the website speed. So maybe we give them a tool like Page Insight Score, and it gives them a performance of their website speed. Now, some of that is to do with the website itself, the files and database, any plugins, that kind of thing. And then another aspect is the server. Is there anything you can do to try and speed up that? But again, the information that we were being asked for, it was like someone's just got in. So how could I speed up my server for my website? Now, again, without giving the details of, I spend £10 a month on my hosting. My website is 30 pages long. It's a WordPress website with no integrations. ChatGPT is going to come back with a whole host of things to ask us, is your server virtualized and all this kind of stuff. And, I did end up sending some of the information to our hosting guys because I didn't have the answers to this. And then literally the guy from the hosting company we dealt with for over 10 years, like sort of emailed me and said, is everything okay? But why are you asking these questions? So even he was like, why? So I explained it, said, right, okay. These really aren't relevant. So I think it is having that relevance, giving ChatGPT the context.
Yeah.
Who is this information for? Who are you asking this information on behalf of? And giving a bit of context, and I think then ChatGPT might be able to rein itself in, I think.
Yeah, I think what I've noticed is, I think as people first discover ChatGPT, is a really exciting concept. They'll give it a basic prompt, they'll get something back and think, well, that's absolutely incredible. I can't believe I've got that, in less than 3 seconds. And they use it. As you're somebody that gets to use it more and more, and obviously I'm using it every day now, I can still spot a mile off when that's being used. And I think that comes from, like you say, giving a very basic prompt, taking the first response and thinking, wow, this is incredible. I'll use this. Whether it's for from speaking personally, like a social media post that I've come across. And I can spot it a mile off. And I think it's getting to know what you need to ask it, or even, top tip, you can almost tell them to ask you questions. Ask me 5 questions about how I can get A, B, C. I want a caption for so and so. This is the client. This is who we want to reach. Ask me what you need to know to give me the best possible caption, best possible content, whatever it is. And it really does, it can break it down so simply like that for you. And I think that way you get a more refined, to be honest, I think it just becomes less obvious that you've used ChatGPT that way. And it really picks up a tone, it holds the tone, and then the rest of the conversation will flow into that one sort of base then.
Yeah, so to give an example of that, let's just say I'm going to go to ChatGPT. I need to create a strategy, a marketing strategy for a builder's merchant. So I literally go to ChatGPT and say, I need to create a marketing strategy on behalf of a builder's merchant. What do you need to know to help me create that document? That strategy, and then it will ask, where's it located, who's it catered for, what's your price plan, what's the competition. You need to tell me what your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats are, what you're hoping to achieve, your goals. I hope it'll ask all these questions because that's what you need to know. What are your resources in the business, etc., etc. So hopefully it should then ask you a bunch of questions, and then it could take you time to put in the information, but without doing that, it's not going to be able to create an accurate and relevant strategy. Otherwise, if you just go in there, create me a strategy for a merchant,
absolutely,
then it's going to go and create just a really generic strategy for builders merchants. But asking it to ask for the right information, and hopefully
that's it, because at the end of the day it's a tool and it's how you use the tool, and it does take a bit of playing around and it does take a bit of time to understand it, but I think if you can put the time in and like you say, have a conversation with it rather than just taking its first answer. And I mean, even with probably a whole conversation in itself, with the images that it can create. There's been multiple times where I've asked it to give me its own prompt. So, I know I want a certain type of image for a certain client. I kind of know what feel I want from that image. I explain that in just very sort of basic terms, like I would be having a conversation with anybody about it. But then obviously it knows what it needs and what level of detail it needs to be able to create the image that I want. And it will come up with a paragraph this big with the prompt. I'll send it back to itself, and 9 times out of 10, it's almost perfect. It may need a couple of tweaks, but knowing those tweaks as well, knowing what the right thing to say, what right feedback to give, you will get that image much quicker than just saying, I want an image of people in the park.
Yeah. And if we're talking about images, I think things are changing all the time. At the time that we're filming this, Nano Banana is really good at creating images if you give it a good prompt. But I think to kind of re-engineer a way of getting prompts. So if you can see in Pinterest, you've got a really nice looking image, or you've seen a Nike ad and you've seen the image on there, so that is cool. I'd love to be able to create an image like that. You can't use the image because it's copywritten, but you can put that into ChatGPT and then reverse engineer it and say, look, what is a prompt to describe this image in Nano Banana? So then ChatGPT will look at the image somehow, don't know how, analyze it, goes into a little black box, and analyze it, and it will create a prompt that it thinks that would create an image like that. Then you can go into Nano Banana, put that prompt in, and it will create an amazing image. So again, different tools are probably better used for different use cases, whether that is kind of research or whether that's for image creation. But that's one way that you can use these tools to actually create the prompts for you. But again, I think you've just got to explain the context. What is it that you're hoping to get out? And what are you going to use it for? And who is it for? Who's going to see it?
Yeah.
And then also, who are you doing it on behalf? So if we're doing it on behalf of a client, we've got to explain, right, these are solicitors, or these are accountants, and their customers are small businesses. And therefore, ChatGPT will tweak its output to make sure it's suitable for the reader and also for the creator.
That's it.
So, I mean, I have literally, as you do, I was trying to play with ChatGPT to actually help with this video. So I'm sort of having a look. Can you provide some really crap prompts and some example prompts? And to be honest, it was getting this mixed up, and it was giving some sort of poor outputs. And then I would ask it. So it's asking, right, it's giving some examples of bad prompts and then links to where it's found a bad prompt and an example. And then I said, okay, can you just, because it's saying this is a bad prompt, generate a realistic handshake photo. And then what it's done is purposely, you can see what it's saying, unusual handshake with extra fingertips. Now, I didn't ask for that. It's basing it based on what we've been talking about here, saying, oh, well, you're talking about bad prompts, so I'm going to use this as a bad prompt, and I'm going to give you a bad output as an example. And then create a logo with a strange push logo on textured paper. Now, I didn't ask for the textured paper. I don't think that's a bad logo, actually. And then create a shot with sale on it. Festive confusion above the store. So I've said, look, you've purposely created poor images, and they don't reflect my prompts. And then it's right, okay, so it's created this. What a good prompt should result in, and what should a bad prompt is. But it's not showing what the good prompt and the bad prompt is. So I even myself, I'm getting a little bit lost back and forth. So I thought, right, okay, I'll put it to test. I'll put these so-called bad prompts into ChatGPT to see, and I'll do it in a different chat to see what it comes out with. Now that is a bad logo.
Very Hogwartsy.
But strangely enough, the example of a bad logo in the previous thing was actually probably better than what he'd done here. But this, for example, create a shop sign that says sell, sell. Great.
Mm.
From what I've asked for. So what I'm getting at is that even though ChatGPT is saying that is a rubbish prompt, and I think back in the old days, if you did that, it would come up with some pretty
Yeah.
rubbish results. And I think we've all been there where it asks us,
Mhm.
put some text in there, and the text comes out with complete gibberish.
Yeah.
I just don't think it does it anymore. But
No.
these are
Well, it,
examples. These are previous examples of,
yes,
what something might look like. Absolute
that
gibberish.
looks familiar.
But I just don't think you get that anymore. I think it's
No.
really quite hard to get these kind of images.
That I was going to say, it was renowned for the adding extra fingers and hands and limbs, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Um, so it's really hard to
I
get
think,
bad results. And
yeah,
when I say really like bad results, obviously bad results where you've got the misspelling of words, too
yeah,
many fingers on a hand, eyes in the back of somebody's head. Those kind of, it's quite hard to get those results now. I think, but even if you do know what you're doing, you're using it day in and day out, you still can get incorrect. I'm not saying bad results,
mm,
incorrect results. So we use it. I use it all the time for HubSpot. So we advise on HubSpot, but HubSpot can be used for 1,000 different things. Thousands of businesses use it, and they ask for like completely unique like requests. So sometimes I have to go to HubSpot, like what, like just to speed, like how can we go about doing this, creating this kind of pipeline for this kind of deal?
yeah,
This if they've only on a HubSpot starter package, blah blah blah, without any automation, and it will come up with this result, and it'll tell me like, give me step by step guide, and it'll do that, and I'll follow it, and it's kind of working. Then it'll kind of like, no, doesn't work. I
mm,
have to go back to no, you can't do that, and goes, oh no, you're right, okay, and then we'll go back. So it's not perfect,
no.
but you've got to keep sense checking it,
Mhm.
scrutinizing it, going back to it, and just making sure you are actually getting the correct results.
Yeah, because I think sometimes it's kind of got that mentality of always trying to find you a solution, and there may actually just, it may not be possible. So, like you say, it's kind of a bit of a trial and error testing and pushing ChatGPT. Um, but I think another thing, the way that I use it is if I see a good example of something, or if I see a tone of voice that I like in a social media post or on a blog or whatever it might be, I will send them good examples of things, and it obviously stores all of that, and it will keep referring back to that good example and keep producing answers in line with that then. As well as, you've got to tweak it. I have between 20 and 30 different clients, completely different industries. So I've got a lot of projects open in ChatGPT, and I've had to come up with obviously a profile for each of them. So I think when I see something good and I think I really like that, I like how they've done that, that would really suit this client, I send that over, and that's kind of done a lot of hard work for me, you know what I mean? So I think there's some little tips and tricks on how to get around it, but at the end of the day, it takes time to build up, and it's worth putting in that time.
Yeah, I think the example that I think I showed you there about, say, the logo creation.
Mm.
So in the first chat I was having, it was in my project Strategy Plus.
Hmm.
So there's probably a whole load of chats I've had previously all about Strategy Plus, and I've uploaded some branding, some documents, and this, that, the other. The website address, so they know who Strategy Plus is within that project. So when I say create a Strategy Plus logo, I think it was even ChatGPT suggested Strategy Plus. I didn't even mention the name,
Yeah.
and then it created it and it was kind of a similar style to us. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar to our branding.
Yeah.
It's not quite. But when I went out of that project and went into a new chat and said create a logo with Strategy
Mhm.
Plus, it was nothing like our brand,
Completely
was
different.
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think do try and use these projects
Yes.
because it will help ChatGPT again with this context.
Hmm.
When you start talking about brand name, it knows this brand name. It knows this is
Yeah.
a builder's merchant. They know where they're located, the customers, the turnover, this, that, the other, blah, blah, blah. So when you start asking questions about it, the answers are already more refined.
Yeah. Because of course you can add to the notes of that project. You can give it clear instructions within the notes so that every chat within that project then will be in line with those original notes that are attached to the project. So I find that really helpful. I'll still find occasionally I might start a new chat and I can see kind of the tone might shift a bit, and I have to sort of refer back and say, back to this kind of tone, back to this kind of prompt. But generally speaking, it makes it so much easier to make sure everything's cohesive, because I'm not necessarily always trying to come up with a social media caption for the client. It could be something else, but I want it all to sound like it's obviously for one brand, one company. So the projects, I think, are just invaluable on ChatGPT.
Okay, so in summary, there are such things as crap prompts. But I think what is worse is when people don't scrutinize the results and
Yep.
ask it further questions and just sense check what they're actually spitting out. So this obviously helps if you're asking questions about a subject matter that you know something about. But trying to give it a bit of context, what's the output for, who's going to be read by, who's it going to be used by, who's going to be used for, and what's it on behalf of, if you're doing it on behalf of a client, and then just trying to scrutinize the result. Don't just take the result, copy and paste and send to anyone.
Yeah.
Because everybody's going to say, right, you've just used ChatGPT, you haven't really spent much time on this at all. And now it's going to be really awkward because they're going to have to come back to you and say, this doesn't quite make sense, or we're not going to be able to do this because, you're asking for too much, it's just not reasonable or relevant.
Yeah.
Which makes things very awkward.
Yeah. And everybody's going to sound the same if we all do it that way.
Yeah. So, okay, well, hopefully anybody watching this will bear this in mind. I'm sure you've all got this in hand anyway, but happy prompting.
Happy prompting.